Hey everybody, welcome to our Agent Pursuit interview today. We have a special guest, and it's fun that you are a guest because typically you are my fellow co-host.
Yes, dual purpose.
Yeah, but today I kind of get to Barbara Walters the crap out of you because you it's a term, because you get to be our guest today. And what I'm so excited about is I know your story. We're married, so I know your story. But over the past couple of years, a lot has changed in your life professionally, and where you came from in terms of your story and your real estate team and now your ownership position at CIR is fascinating. But timely right now is the fact that one of the biggest catapults that led into where you're at now came from a recession. And some very big changes that you made in your business and in your real estate team. And given the market that we're at today and a lot of the courses that you hold at CIR and a lot of the resources that we're doing in the mentorship groups that we have and the business coaching that our office managers are doing is so specific right now to working in a recession market, a market that's coming back a little bit, but there's still a lot of people struggling. And you really have some incredible history personally in dealing with that and overcoming it.
Yeah.
So Lindsey Smith on Agent Pursuit is going to be talking about weathering the storm. So let's start, brief background. Most people know who you are, but in general, your real estate history for those people that don't know where you started.
Yeah, I went to university briefly at the University of Calgary. Did 3 years there, had 1 year left to finish my diploma, my degree. I guess my mother still hates me for that. But I got in the fitness industry and wanted to pursue a passion of business and health and fitness, and worked in the fitness industry for 3 years. And then I actually got myself into so much consumer debt that I couldn't even make my minimum payments, and that was something that was problematic. So I was really good at selling stuff, and so I needed to sell bigger things. So I decided to get into real estate because I thought, if I can sell houses, that's good. And I actually read a book called High Trust Selling by a guy named Todd Duncan, and he was selling insurance policies and talking about $100 million insurance policies. And I thought, gosh, I just needed to sell bigger things. And when I got into real estate in 2004 was my first full year, and I got my teeth kicked in. It was really, really rough. It took me 3 months to do my first transactions, 11 months to do my first listing, and I'll talk about that a bit more later. But figured a few things out at the end of my first year, and started up a real estate team, and then made some adjustments and got into doing some business coaching and customer service training for clients. Came up with CIR in 2008. End of 2008, and then had the opportunity to buy some shares end of 2016, and here I am today.
So that is the
Reader's
long
Digest.
and short. That is the Reader's Digest of it.
Yeah.
Getting right into what I really want us to focus on today, which is working in this market and building a business in a market like this. You started at a time when real estate was on the up.
Yeah.
Things were kicking, and realtors were licensed to print money at that time in 2007. It's just, the stories are incredible.
Yeah.
So what did that feel like? And then we're going to talk about the fall after that. But what did that feel like?
Well, I mean, things, obviously 2005, I'll never forget when 2005 clipped over to 2006, there was less than 1,000 listings on the market. And if you compare that to like 9,000 today, and if you were to talk about absorption rates, it should have been an indication that you should just buy every single home available in the city of Calgary, because it didn't matter whether it was in the lowest end community to the highest end community. Every house made money. And I had friends who had bought houses, including myself, but wrote books on their investing success. Wow. Because they started buying houses in 2005. They were doing lease options and things like that, where they were the ones that were capitalizing on low lease options. And they wrote investing books in 2007, and all of a sudden, I know two of them personally that went bankrupt going into 2008 and 2009. Into 2009, because the market turned and they were so highly leveraged, it was insane. But it was a license to print money. It really was. We were order takers. I'll never forget where you would show up to a listing and you had 17 offers in on the listing, and one of our realtors in our office at the time had a stack of offers this high, of offers that were in competition but didn't get accepted.
Wow.
And that 2005 was the start of that. I'll never forget it, waking up in the morning.
And you started in 2004.
Yeah.
So things got good pretty quick. That was kind of your first taste of real estate.
Yeah, and the market, I did $40,000 in commissions in my first year, and then the second year I did 210. So, I mean, the market went up. It didn't quintuple like that. So I was able to beat the market from that. And that was very clearly a decision to focus on giving to my clients rather than just trying to get business like I was taught. Always be closing. That was something that resonated, but at the time, and then it didn't work though for me. I had to just focus on adding value. But everyone wanted to buy real estate. Everyone wanted to become an investor, and that made it really simple to grow into.
You obviously built you mentioned you built a real estate team.
Yep.
And obviously you built a team in that market condition.
Yeah.
So what did building a team in that market condition look like from a marketing perspective, an expenditure perspective, a mentality perspective?
Yeah, it's funny that I had gotten into so much consumer debt that I couldn't make my minimum payments. And that got paid off within about a year and a half of starting in real estate because, I guess 2 years, because I had bought a house for $4,000 cash to mortgage, no questions asked. It had a giant hole in the foundation, and I was able to patch it because I dug it out myself for $1,500. I patched up this hole in the foundation. No one wanted the house, and so I turned that over, paid off all my consumer debt, and I lived in an unfinished basement, had underlay instead of carpet because it was too cheap, and had black poly as my walls in the basement, and I rented my upstairs house to university students, my rooms individually to university students. But anyways, to build the team, I soon realized, actually it was a movie called What the Bleep Do We Know? And I realized that I wanted to build something really big. I said I wanted to do 10 deals a month. I just wanted to do a deal a month. And I thought, I want to do 10 deals a month. I want to do 100 deals a month. And I'm like, God, I'm not thinking big enough. I need to do like 100 deals a day. And
the situation around you is looking at stacks of 20 offers on a listing, right? Like that's what's in front of you while you're thinking this.
Yeah, well, not yet. And that was at the end of 2004. And I thought right away that I need someone. I can't do it alone. So I decided to build a team. That was the end of 2005. We didn't realize it was end of 2004. We didn't realize it was going to take off. So I brought my first assistant on at the start of 2005. I couldn't afford her. But then as the market started turning, we could feel the energy picking up. And then I started saying, okay, I was really good at holding seminars and talking to people, sort of like lead gen, and never got a single online lead. I didn't do that until I built my customer service training business. But then I started feeling the energy and invited my business partner to come on with me. And then we had agents who were starting off new in the business. We brought them in, taught them how to do it from a really clear customer service standpoint, handed them a system, took their databases in, and by piling everyone's databases in, we were able to do touch-based campaigns to them that generated the leads and went from there, and did a lot of strategic alliances in terms of connecting with mortgage professionals and financial professionals and getting everybody's databases to pour in. I still believe it today, but mass collaboration is one of the most powerful business concepts. It's how the stock market works, it's how everything works, but collaborating with my home inspectors, my financial professionals around me, everybody that knew my professional network, to get people to invite to join up with seminars and promote their databases, just created a huge amount of people. I mean, within a 2-year period, we were marketing to over 800 people in our database. And
in 2 years, that's what your database was like.
That's right. Yeah, just combining people together.
And just because to kind of prepare for what came next. So at one point, you were renting out the top floor of a house for your office. You had equipment, and you had the front page of Yellow Page. I mean, this got big fast.
Yeah, I can speak to that really quickly. I had this idea that I could be doing business. We were going to create teams of 8 in each quadrant of the city. And then I wanted to be able to do business in Calgary or London, and not London, Ontario, but London, England. And I just thought the sun would never set on the Calgary real estate market. It's funny when we look back on it now, but I just thought it's going to go up forever. So I bought a house, the whole house, strictly for the office. The basement was storage. We put office space up top, and we had flexibility to convert the basement into more office space. And so we did that. I had voice over IP phone systems that would allow us to operate from anywhere we wanted to be. This was all in 2006 and 2007. I had, like you said, I took out $50,000 Yellow Pages ad. I had, that didn't work, by the way. And I bought a truck and a trailer to help clients move with. I had $1,000 a month photocopier in my living room, which turned out to be my living room later on as we had to pivot. But that was it. We did all of our own print marketing. We were doing a ton of stuff, printing out for invites for open houses, and my expenses, my personal expenses and some of the business stuff was $35,000 a month. And we weren't doing any external advertising beyond the Yellow Pages. We weren't, we didn't have billboards like Lindsey Wong at the time, and we didn't have anything like that. Yeah, we weren't doing online leads or anything. We were spending $35,000 a month.
So then
the sun set.
So then the sun set.
Yeah.
And we were gonna. The purpose of all of this is kind of talk about cyclical markets, and we're going to really start relating this back to all of the realtors watching right now and some advice you have based off of your own experience. So we don't have to spend too much time on this, but obviously the sunset, and you were in a position where the life you knew as a realtor and how you were spending your money and how you were getting business basically changed in 30 days. Yeah.
I had stopped actively selling at the start of 2007, and I was just facilitating the team. Full time. I was creating lead generation activities, handling the marketing activities, building business systems. So the end of 2007 came along, and now we've had financial crisis. Global financial crisis has ensued. The market just turned on a dime, and we had to make a decision about whether I was going to get back into selling real estate actively in order to pay for our expenses, or whether we were going to trim the fat. And it's a very humbling exercise to look at everything that you've built and say, how do I save face by not looking like I've failed this? How do I get my expenses back under control? And what do we need to do in order to do this? Because I thought it was just going to go up. And this is the point where we really had to pivot and adjust.
Yeah.
And immediately we let go of our 2 staff members. That's a tough conversation. One of them was just like, I feel like we're breaking up. Like, I've seen you guys rise and do your thing. I just feel like this is like a breakup, and it was quite emotional. I remember from my business partner burst into tears, left the house, and it was a disaster. I rented out the condo that I was in. He moved out of his place. He became my roommate, and so we moved into the office space. So literally, we had 2 beds set up in each of the back offices where we would sleep, and then the front still operated as the office. So we had to go in there. We moved our administration to India for like $7 an hour.
Yeah.
And we found a company that took off all the different sides of that, canceled our voice over IP phone systems, and we went through our credit cards, and literally you found all these different expenditures that we were expending. And I mean, I remember, in a day I canceled $1,500 a month of just online subscriptions to stuff. Oh, I pay $30 a month for Skype. I pay X amount of dollars for this. But we got our expenses down from $35,000 to about $13,500, and then eventually down to $11,500 within a 30-day period.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the end result of all of this is you still did well. I mean, the
business didn't change. It was actually amazing, because you realize how much fat you had on in terms of that needed to be trimmed with your business, and how much overhead we do. People didn't care. They didn't care if I had a house that was an office space. People didn't care if I had a voice over IP phone system. People didn't care if I had this photocopier in my living room, or if we had the administrators. They just wanted us to sell their house and help them through a real estate transaction. And that tweet to me was just mind blowing in terms of that.
But the great thing as far as your team operated, and obviously it was a change of a team, but you were still able in a crash situation, and I think this is what's really important, and just touch on this, and then we'll kind of go into the economy today, is people were still moving. There were still reasons to move. There were still people that needed to buy homes, and it was just a different way of doing business to still bring income in. So a market crash, even the recession we're in today, and we'll talk about this in a minute, there are still a lot of people who are successful despite what's going on around them, and that was just, you guys just had to adapt to that new reality, which you did.
Yeah, it was basically at that time, and it was a race to capitalize on equity, which I feel like is, fast forward to today, July of 2018, you got 9,000 listings in Metro Calgary. Alberta, everywhere in Alberta is looking at, increased inventory. Alberta is like the sort of micro market that's happening, and some places in the U.S. are climbing, and the mortgage rules have hit us hard, and things like that. But people are still getting married, getting divorced, things like that. Houses are moving. There's still a number of sales each month.
Absolutely.
You just got to figure out how to capitalize on your piece of the pie. And it's an opportunity to capture market share as well. But I'll never forget, I was listening to an audio program. This is after that fact. But there's a gentleman, Walter Sanford, and he was saying, I make $1.3 million a year, every single year, and in gross commissions. And he's like, in fast markets, I need 30 listings at any given point in time. And in slow markets, I need 130 listings. And on the books at any given point in time. And some people are just like, what? Like 130? But he's like, that's what I need to do. I need 100 listings or I need 30 listings, depending on market conditions. Because I know that X number of my listings are going to sell, but that's how I make my $1.3 million in commissions. So do you have to work harder in slower times? Absolutely. And everything was a grind. You got very good at having difficult conversations with sellers who had their sights set really, really high. And you were just constantly the bearer of bad news, which was a big contrast because we were the bearer of such good news for such a long period of time.
Well, this is just it, when you said, we were an order taker and you were helping. And I know some of the stories that you said, and even in terms of, some family members, that it was, you made a lot of people a lot of money in some instances very, very quickly. And, almost as quickly for other people, it was, they bought this thinking that in 6 months they were going to have this equity, and they made a lot of life plans on that. And then just as quickly as that happened, you had to be the one to have those conversations where it was like, you've planned your life based off of what we thought was going to happen in the next 6 months. So critical conversations, which is something that we're going to talk about as well, that our agents need to start having with sellers. Those aren't easy, and you have to get very good at them.
Well, and also I had, just from an understanding of how real estate mortgages work, I learned some hard lessons. I bought the house that I bought that we turned into an office was July 2017. And look at the charts, because that is the peak of the peak of the peak. The worst time, did I say
2007.
2007, sorry. That was the peak of the peak. And I had bought that, and I paid like $410 for it. I mean, it was on the corner of McKnight and Center A Street, right behind the Petrocan. Some people would see it today. I thought I was going to rezone it to commercial. I got a couple of investors to go in on it with me so that I could renovate the house and things like that.
Yeah.
And the house shook when vehicles went by, so I overpaid for it dramatically. And then in 2010, our mortgage came up for renewal. And what's funny about that is that with mortgages, people think, oh, I got a mortgage for 25 years or 30 years. And back then, you get a mortgage for 40 years. But no, you actually only have a mortgage for the term of the mortgage. So when the 3-year period came up that my mortgage term was for, the bank said, great, you owe us the money, you owe us. And I had put 15% down. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? Like, I just thought I'd sign somewhere and they give me the money. And they said, no, you owe us the balance. Well, aren't you just going to renew? And they're like, no, we don't offer that product anymore. And what it was is a special self-employed product that wasn't CMHC insured. They self-insured at the time. And it was with a very big mortgage company that's out there today that a lot of mortgage brokers use. And they pulled it out from underneath me.
So they wanted the money.
They wanted the money. And that was it. And then the house that I bought for $410 was now worth $350, and I owed $365 on it, or $360. So they basically looked at me and said, and so nobody else would give me a mortgage because it's upside down. So what do you do? And they're putting me in foreclosure. I'm like, I made my payments. And they're like, yeah, but we don't offer that product anymore. Since you're self-employed, you're high risk. They said, you can just requalify, which I couldn't at the time because I didn't claim that much income being self-employed. And anyways, I had to put down another 20% to make it work. And so, I mean, they were literally going to foreclose on me, and I made every single payment. So don't think that, your clients, your mortgages are for 5 years, 3 years, whatever the term is. And in good markets, they'll do it, but there's nothing saying that that company needs to renew with you.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
So some parallels to today.
Yeah.
And some, let's not speak specifically to mortgages, but the climate that we're in right now seems to have a lot of conversations based off of mortgages.
Yeah.
And our sales down because our first-time home buyers not getting in. What does that look like in terms of agents having conversations with clients and some advice that you would have knowing what you went through?
Yeah.
And setting people up for success long-term in a market where, last week interest rates went up. There's trade wars happening that could, re-affect how interest rates go. Products are changing all of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the first thing you have to understand is as you become a business owner, you realize that very quickly your margins are going to get thinner. And what I mean by that is you have, let's say that 50% of your listings are selling, whereas before 80% of your listings would sell or 90% of your listings would sell. And let's say it costs you $750 to market each listing. So now you look and you say, okay, so for every 6 listings I have or 4 listings I have, I'm trying to do the math here, but basically it'd be like, it's going to cost me, so for 4 listings, it could cost me $3,000 to sell them all. Well, what if only 2 of those sell? Well, now it's $3,000 to sell there, whereas before, all of them but 1 would sell. So my margins are thinner because it costs more money to sell more listings and I don't get all of them sold. So that is something you need to adapt to, and you need to start making business decisions about which listings you take on. Now, or you say, hey, I got to make sure my expenses are manageable enough that I can live within my margins. Same thing with buyers. It's like, well, not every buyer is going to be qualified. Or I have to show buyers a lot more houses because they're kind of on the fence or people aren't there. So I got to make a lot more contacts, which means I'm spending more time, which then thins out my margins again because I have to work with buyers longer than I did before. And once you know your numbers, you can just look back and say, here's the new reality. Am I still profitable?
Right.
And the thing that people run into is that they're used to a certain lifestyle. They're accustomed to a certain way of living. I mean, I was finally at a point where I didn't have to live with roommates anymore. I was young. I mean, I started in real estate when I was 23. And so I had roommates and different things like that. You can live in an unfinished basement when you're 23. You don't have kids. Totally. But when you get a little bit older, I thought, gosh, now I can finally afford to live on my own. And I had this condo that we had bought, and so it was, I was living there, and I thought, this is the life. I got my own pad now, and it was great. Except the lifestyle that I wanted to live wasn't conducive to my income, and this is where realtors get, I think, caught up because when they look at their business expenses, they don't factor in the fact that they are the biggest expense in their business. The car they drive, the house that they live in, the activities that their kids are involved in, things like that, the cable subscriptions they have, things like that. That is the biggest expense in their business and something that's holding them back in a lot of cases. And I'm not saying you shouldn't enjoy life. Obviously we should, but you have to live within your means, and you have to make sure that you're not, as I like to say, you're not pretending to be rich. There's too many realtors and people in life that just want to pretend to be rich. They own these flashy cars that they can't afford, these big houses they can't afford, they're leveraged to the hilt, and all these types of things. And as a result, when the market turns a little bit, their margins get thinner in their business because it costs them money to market the listings, less listings are selling, they don't have the money to float themselves.
This is something that you kind of taught me and in our life together that's very much so based off of that experience is when I know that when we went to buy the house we live in now, our second house, it was, and even our first house that we bought, it was, we had to buy a house that I could qualify for on my own.
Right.
Which, and you know, you said we work collectively in a cyclical market.
Absolutely.
And whatever decisions we make, we need to be just as comfortable at the bottom of that cycle as we are at the top of that cycle. And you can absolutely enjoy the fruits when they're there and make good decisions. But if you try and live a life that's going to be based off of the sun will never shine on real estate, the sun will never set, that's when a lot of people are going to get into a lot of trouble. So I think recognizing that we all work in that industry and making life decisions, knowing, you know, we go to the CREB forecast every year and they put the graphs on that go back from like 1960, and it is like this. And the good news is you know, even right now, it's already back on that up.
It goes up. I mean, sometimes it dips way down, but you know, ultimately it goes up.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Ultimately it goes up. But if you're always planning your life based off the top and not the little dip that you're going to get, you're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Well, and that's where the biggest life lesson that I learned, you know, the summary of it all is just live within your means. Like there's just nothing else to it. Yeah. But the overall piece of that is you have to prepare yourself for, you know, worst case scenario. And people, I remember I did a prospectus for investors that I was going to give this house that I was going to zone to commercial, the house we bought for the office. I'll never forget. I said best case scenario, we get this thing rezoned. I bought it for $410. We sell it for like $650, $680. Worst case scenario, we get inflationary increases, and that's it. So 2% each year, and we still make money. And we can't get a rezone, and we still make money. I didn't realize that worst case scenario was that prices would drop by 20%. Like that just wasn't in my realm of reality that was worst case scenario. And now I know that worst case scenario, you know, yours and my decisions, was that I am an entrepreneur. Like I live an entrepreneurial lifestyle and things like that, which means that you don't know when you're going to get paid. And it's something, you're a business owner, and you always got to be prepared that if for some reason the market turned and I had to, you know, and there's some backing that you need to give to the company, that comes out of your own pocket. And how do you ensure that you're positioned for that? So if I didn't work or didn't have a job, because I'm horribly unemployable, you know, whereas you have a marketing degree, communications, or a communications degree, master's of communication, you can go to get another job. Myself, who's going to hire me? Like,
well, and that's a lot of, and you know, you're speaking to a lot of realtors as well, right? I mean, like you as a business owner in real estate, every person watching is a business owner in real estate, is the exact same position.
If you haven't figured that out and haven't planned your business so that, you think things are bad now, what about Detroit? Like when it went down, I mean, houses were selling for, you know, less than the commissions that were being paid on them. They were bulldozing entire communities.
And Las Vegas.
That's right.
During the recession.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, people went from selling 300-400 homes a year in some of these big complexes down to selling nothing, where they just everything went bankrupt and stuff. And what are you doing to insulate yourself? Now, you don't have to say, oh gosh, like what if I make zero for the next 2 years?
Of course.
You have to be sure you adapt and you pivot and you can move towards where the opportunities are, and you got to be prepared to work.
Well, and looking at the market today. So let's because you have some great thoughts on where the market is and where it's going. But a segue that still speaks to what we're talking about in terms of insulating yourself is there. You know, 2 years ago, everyone wanted more listings.
Right.
Like there's always this little bit of a jealousy about wanting to be a listing agent. You know, I typically work with buyers, and I really want more listings. And then suddenly this market switches a little bit, and now there are more listings. And there's a lot of realtors that never carry 10 listings, but now they can, and it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Because they never really were able to before, but we have a lot of realtors, not on our company, there's 9,000 listings. There's a lot of people who have taken on more listings than they can realistically handle, and they're in the situation where, you know, the next listing that they're taking, you know, they don't have the $750. So, you know, maybe the first 8 they took had professional photography, but this one it's not going to. And you know, the last listing is, you know, the last reflection of the job that you did, but you don't have the money. And it's a little bit of a spiral in terms of how are you handling the money you have and the business you have in this market. And the listing thing is becoming a little bit of a monkey for quite a few people.
Yeah, and in terms of sustaining it, but I'm telling you now, that grab every listing you can. Like and I mean that sincerely. Provided price is realistic, but you have to master a few different things. Number one, you have to have difficult conversations. Like, does this person actually have a reason they want to sell, or are they just trying to test the market? If that's the case, then don't worry about it. But if they do have a motivation to sell, then they will eventually come down to a price that's reasonable. And although it costs you $750, you might pick up a client off it. Maybe you don't, but eventually that house will sell. But now you've met some people that you can add to your database, and you don't know when the market is going to turn. So if you're having trouble paying for the cost of the listings, find somebody to partner with that does have the cash and to hold on to it. So it's like all of a sudden you say to someone, hey, listen, let me bring you in. I'm going to give you 40% of the commission or anything else. You front the $750 and we'll make this thing work. Or, and I'll get you the exposure on it, or we split it 50-50. You can split it 60-40, but you retain the relationship with the client as a result of it. Maybe you only take 30% of the listing commission, but now you still have the client, you're still getting the sign calls, somebody else fronts the money for you, because there's still lots of people that have cash out there. They're willing to lend the money, but the more listings that you have, the more control of the inventory you are, the more relationships you have, and it's a better opportunity. Before, if someone said, I used to carry 2 listings at a time, and now they can carry 12 listings at a time, well, that's 10 more people that you're working with. So what are you doing to ensure that you preserve those relationships and you're just out there getting more and more clients? It's like you might only be taking 50% of the commission, but you have triple the listings.
Right.
So you're actually further ahead at the end of the day.
Right. And I guess one of the things, you can kind of speak to is you just said you're further ahead at the end of the day, but there's a little bit of uncertainty right now as to when the end of the day is.
Right.
So there's this, call it this gap right now where people are sitting and they're a bit concerned and they're waiting, and they have 10 clients who think, this isn't working and my home's been on the market forever, and the contracts are going to come up and I'm not going to relist with you so I'm going to relist with someone else. And then you're thinking like, oh my goodness, if you're going to relist with somebody else, and if you do that, it probably means that you are going to have a price reduction, and then that client's just going to think that I was a bad agent because I didn't. So these are all the conversations going on in people's heads right now. So what would your advice be on, I guess, kind of the name of this section, what is your advice on weathering the storm that people are in right now to get through to the end of the day?
Yeah, okay, so first of all, no one knows when the end of the day is coming. No. So you now need to adjust your life and your business to the new reality, just right away. I'm going to say that is you need to look at your resources. Are they maximized? What are you spending money on marketing? Is it actually paying off? Is it actually getting the returns that you want? I look at, we just did some great interviews with some agents that we're talking about the resources that CIR has. If you ever have an opportunity to use the free tools, from the contest to my marketing to getting involved in everything that the brokerage offers and stuff, now is the time, because you got to ask yourself whether or not the dollars that you're investing in the graphic design things are worth it when we have the concierge level that you can go ahead and tap into. So make sure that your resources are maximized. How do you use the brokerage for absolutely everything that they offer to prevent that? I'll never forget my team. It's like, gosh, if I had the office space, which I didn't need, but if I had the resources CIR had, I bet you my expenses would have been $15,000 a month versus $35,000 a month. I'll never forget that moment when I came over to CIR of just being like, holy crap, literally 20 grand a month I would have saved. And that was back in 08. And so that was a long time ago, and we've like quintupled the amount of resources that we provide now. This isn't intended to be a brokerage plug, but it's intended to look around you and figure out what do you have now that you can better utilize in terms of resources. You need to adjust your personal spending. We talked about that. But the other thing is that you need to ensure that you look at the opportunities. So you use the example of a listing comes up, and this is part of the game. A seller is upset with you because their listing isn't selling, so they go and list with somebody else. Well, what you need to do is find that other person who has already been upset with their agent, who expired, who is going to list with somebody else, and that becomes you. And in that moment, allows you to be the person that is the voice of reason, now gets the price reduction, and now it's going to cost you another $750, but now you're into the 2 listings for $1,500. You're the one that finally sells it. You get your $8,000. You know, your margin is $6,500, and at the end of the day, you're like, okay, now before my margin would have been, $7,250. Now it's $6,500, but I've adapted my lifestyle accordingly. And you have to go out there and you have to work harder.
Right.
You have to work harder on things that you can control. We had a great interview with agents who are mastering the telephone. And what's so great about that is you watch these 2 agents and they are just, Max Niesimoff and Cass Karen, talking to them was such a cool experience because here's something that's absolutely in your control. You can pick up the phone any day of the week and you can spend 8 hours a day. I mean, if it came down to it, and my family's livelihood was on the line, my financial livelihood was on the line, things like that, and I need something to weather the storm, I'm going to A to Z in the phone book, literally the white pages, get my listing subscription, whatever it is, and I'm calling people. And I'm saying, hey, we got a ton of information about the market in your community. Have you had any questions about the market? Are you happy with where you're living right now? We'd love to help you out, or maybe you know somebody else that would be interested in that information. And I'd start from A and go to Z, but I'd make it work. And that's free. It's basically, it's going to cost you $295 a year for your telelisting subscription, but it's like, here's something that's totally...
And that's kind of your do not call list for people.
Yeah, but it's just like, that's in my control. So what is in your control? I'm sitting in open houses 2 per weekend. During the week, I'm calling, I'm door knocking, like I'm doing absolutely everything. I'm investing money on my website. I'm talking to people. I'm networking as much as I can, and I'm creating my own reality. And whereas before, I might have only needed to, talk to 5 people a day in a busy market, now I need to talk to 20 people a day. And that's my commitment. And that's my commitment to myself. And the listing inventory needs to be higher, but you can make it work. You gotta work harder. And that's it. But once you control your expenses, then you're used to the reality. I'll tell you what happens is that I had a dream in 2008, and Lehman Brothers had just gone bankrupt and a bunch of other stuff, and I'll never forget this dream. And it was Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, and I'm sitting in a room with them, and I just said, what is the #1 piece of advice you can give me right now? And they just said, Lindsey, preserve your cash.
That was a dream.
Yeah, and it was just, it's not that profound, but yeah, it's like, but for the people, it's like, preserve your cash, because the opportunity is now. And I was just like, what do you mean? But it's like, now, he who or she who preserve their cash in this marketplace can go out there and you will take more listings than you can ever imagine, because you have a little bit of money to invest in it. It's like you can go out there and you can get advertising for cheaper than you've ever got it before. You can do all these types of things because you have the cash. You can buy real estate for cheaper. One of our agents brought me in the office the other day and showed me this price reduction she got in this house, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. If you had cash, you're going to flip that thing in 6 months for X amount of dollars, but people didn't position themselves. So let that be a lesson today where you say, this recession is coming again. And the boom is coming again. Trans Mountain Pipeline gets done. The mortgage rules settle out. Sellers' expectations come in. We're diversifying Calgary's economy a little bit. The investment comes back, and there's already talk about it.
And this is hands down. We live in a great place.
Yeah,
there's nothing epically bad that's happening. That this will always be a great place in the world to live.
We see the bumper stickers, and we joke about them, but it says, please God, give me another oil boom, because I promise not to piss it away this time. And that's the same thing with insert real estate boom or stuff like that.
Absolutely.
And it's like, when you get that cash, leave your lifestyle the same way it is. Now smart money positions itself, and you're laughing for the future. But as long as you keep in your mind, the market might drop by 30%. Am I positioned to weather that storm?
Mm-hmm. From a cash perspective, I like what you said about utilizing resources that are available to you, because we see a lot of realtors come from other brokerages, realtors, that we just sit down with after they've been brand new in the business for a few months, and they say, well, what have you been doing? Well, I hired this graphic designer and I created this listing presentation, and you just think, you know, that's not going to make you money right now, right?
No.
Like, use this, it's free, spend your time. You know, we had another interview recently with somebody, and we said, you know, what did you spend your money on in your first year to be successful? And he's like, gas.
Yeah.
Because I needed to meet people, I needed to have real estate conversations, and I needed to build my database. And focusing on things like that,
Brilliant.
even in recessionary times right now, if you have been in the business for 5 or 6 years, it's don't spend your money and your time doing these things that what you learned in your business, your clients don't care that you're doing your own in-house marketing and that you have a printer. They care that you're getting your home sold. So use the resources that you have and try and not reinvent the wheel, because this is not the time for it. And even during the good times, that's probably still not the time for it, because that's not what people care about.
Oh my gosh, and I've always said that in real estate as well, the benefit of real estate is not that you know, you can make a lot of money and a ton of money being a great realtor, but there's so much power in also meeting the network that you have and those opportunities. And if you have some cash, you know, in my own personal situation, suddenly Ray Stater approaches me and says, Lindsey, I'm thinking of selling my shares. Would you be interested? And if I was destitute at that time.
Well, and if you had chosen to drive the $100,000 car and live in the $1.5 million house,
I would have never done it.
You would have never done it, because all of your cash would have been.
And it's scary what you can qualify for, or what you could qualify for. I mean, it's scary. I'll never forget, even the they do the mortgage rules comparison. You used to be able to, on a $100,000 income, afford a $750,000 house, and it's, but now you can only you know, afford $550,000, and it's like, vote against the mortgage rules. Are you freaking kidding me? Now, I agree that the mortgage rules changes should have been dripped out over a longer period of time. There should have been a more subtle change, because we got, you know, the government got us in this issue in the first place.
And unfortunately, you know, market specifically.
That's right, and we got a double whammy of oil prices, you know, things like that.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, there's no reason someone that only makes $100,000 should be buying a $750,000 house.
No.
Like, you freaking kidding me? Like, that's insanity. Like, that's absolutely insanity. That's like a mansion to me. Like, and I just look and it's insane, and it's not a mansion, obviously. I mean, $1 million is not anywhere what it used to be.
No, but still, on a $100,000 income, you know, the example that you said with that number, I wouldn't myself, if that was all the money that I had coming in personally, I would never even buy a 5. Like, even the new ones, it's still kind of like, that's kind of tough, right? So
yeah, like, you should be in like a $300,000 townhouse with your 2 kids. Like, anyways, I'm not here to tell people where they should, you know, be living or what they should spend their money on.
No, but
it's the overall concept.
From a fiscal responsibility standpoint, as a business owner, specifically as a business owner that might have to deal with times like this, I think that's right. That's
so
what you're prepared.
Yeah, you got to look, and you got to always be prepared. So,
yeah.
Anyways.
Okay. No, that makes sense. So let's talk about some very specific stuff right now. Advice to realtors who need to sell listings, because that is the buzz in the office right now, is what do I do to differentiate myself, to get this stuff sold, to have the price reductions that I need to have?
Yeah.
What's working?
Yeah. So obviously you got to make sure you have the staples. You got to make sure the house is decluttered and looks good inside. Otherwise, you're just, if you don't have the gumption to tell your clients the truth, that their house is too cluttered and you don't have the expertise, you can hire a stager, but some basic common sense of just like, make sure the house looks open, uncluttered. You can Google 3 articles online, and you are in a position to at least provide some good advice.
Can I mention one thing? We had a real estate event a few years ago, and we had a realtor on a panel who mentioned exactly what you were just talking about in terms of the importance of. And somebody said, "Well, but how do you tell your client that their art isn't nice? How do you tell them that bed sheet has to go right?" Like, these are people's personal opinions. There's a lot of realtors who are just like, I don't feel comfortable doing it. And I loved her answer, because she said, I am getting paid an insane amount of money to give you hard advice.
Yeah.
Like, if my job was easy and I couldn't have these conversations with you and I couldn't do what was needed to get the job done, I shouldn't be making the money that I'm doing. It's my job to know how to have those critical conversations with you. And I was like, that is so powerful.
Perfect.
I love that.
So you have it where you got to get the house looking its best. Whether you're on a budget and you hire a stager or not, or you say, you know what, I'm just going to do my best because I've done my homework. If you don't have the budget to hire the stager, you need to do the research. You need to figure out, you need to become the stager and the expert. And literally, I'm not saying like nothing, like stagers are amazing, so you need to do it. I mean, they're amazing. I really think everyone should have a staging consultation. But let's say you're not you're not in a position to afford it for your clients, you need to do the research and bring in the checklist and help them get that organized. Then you got to make sure you have the great photography, not an option, professional photos, and make sure you have great comments written that set it apart. How are you going to use it? Well, now you're at, $250 because you read the articles, you gave them advice yourself, so you're still breaking the bank. And then you go to work. And what I mean by going to work is you need to talk to every realtor that's sold something in that area recently, everyone that has a listing in that area. You need to make sure that they understand the value proposition of your listing. Now, I know they get a ton of information on that, but you need to make sure that they give you the feedback because you're communicating that back to your client. And now your client is being educated because the market is going to set the price. You have it looking its best, and you've done everything you can from promoting this. It's on the MLS. It's setting itself apart. It looks great among the listing. Now we have AdWorks and things like that. You've promoted the CIR community. You've sat open houses there, things like that. You've done this stuff. Now it's a matter of keeping the seller educated. And a big part of this becomes you got to get price reductions if it's not selling. Or if it's not, never going to sell because the client is just there, they have to be educated from the standpoint that's like, listen, rent this out. Rent this out. Like, keep it for a little while, and give them honest advice.
Yeah.
But you talk to as many people about it to get as much feedback on it as possible. And now you're educating your client and working with them to get their expectations back in line. So prep the home, get many people talking about it as possible, giving you feedback on it.
Yeah.
And share that feedback with your client, and then you adjust. It's just review, adjust, review, adjust. That's all it is.
That's so. I love, and the price reduction isn't the end game. That's not the be all end all of anything. But there you have so many realtors in the office being like, my client's just like, this home will never sell. There's nothing we can do to make this home sell. It's like, if your home was $1,
yeah,
your home would sell.
Totally.
Right? So to say the market sets the pricing and just being able to have extremely accurate conversations about those feedback loops, it's 100. If you've done everything you can, it's 100% about price, and you need to be able to communicate that.
Yeah. So you've taken your ads out, you've done it. You have a certain blitz of marketing that you do. Maybe you did a coming soon open house and a coming soon blitz to certain things. You take some ad out, so now your spend is up to $500 for your listing of maybe $700. But now it's like, okay, you've done what you can. The market at large has seen your listing. It's in a point that they've seen it. It's looking its best and things like that. The only thing that's left is price.
Yeah.
It's like there's the 4 P's of marketing: price, product, promotion, and place. You can't affect place. You can affect price. You can affect promotion. You can if your client needs to modify the product a bit in terms of staging, you can do that. The rest is just the price. But most people miss all the other ones. They don't do the promotion to start, things like that. But once you've your hands are clean in terms of what you've done, because you can't, if they say, I want a billboard for my house, I want it in Avenue magazine, I want it front page here, that's okay. Well, now I need a retainer up front,
yeah,
of $1,500 minimum, or you want to do $15,000 in advertising, maybe this is like a super high-end home, retainer up front of the money, and we'll put in these magazines, or your listing fee is 30 and 3 now. It's not 7 and 3, it's 30 and 3. So I get an extra $23,000 in marketing on that. And are you prepared to invest that cost up front, or does the client have skin in the game?
Right.
And that's all on the table. Someone on our Facebook feed the other day was saying, hey, I took a retainer in advance. They want to be unrealistic. They know it's overpriced, but we want to try it. Get a retainer for your marketing. You don't need to pay for that.
Right. That's good advice. So the good news, I feel like this has been a little kind of worst case scenario looking at what we've been doing for the past year. But the good news is in the last couple of weeks, and that's really been as recent as it has been, but it does seem, just like all real estate cycles are, that things are starting to move a little bit. There is a bit more optimism. Economically, when you look at job creation and immigration that's coming in, and businesses are we have a lot of friends in oil and gas who things are obviously not back to where they could possibly be, but you will occasionally post something about this project hiring here, and we need a bunch of construction workers. So
yep.
Slowly but surely, other than the real estate article, other than the real estate section of the newspapers, which are still real estate is where it is. All the other economic articles seem very positive.
Totally.
Alberta families still have the highest GDP out of any families in the country.
Yep.
So stuff is happening. So preparing for that as an agent, your thoughts on that. You mentioned a little bit, but what do you think people can be doing today? And in general, based off all the stuff you're reading about our economy, where do you see things going in the next year?
Well, as the optimism increases around Keystone getting finished, and we can actually move more oil from our marketplace, so that's a huge thing right now. And even on the optimism between that and the Trans Mountain Pipeline, oil companies are already talking about reinvestment because the price of oil has come back to a level now that we are happy with.
Well, I guess that's just another thing. I mean, oil just isn't $49 anymore.
That's right. So
like
right
that's
there,
something right there.
But the investment hasn't come back, so the jobs aren't created yet. But as this comes back, we see it where then the job creation comes back and people are working, we'll see income goes up and we'll get that in-migration and obviously the demand for houses. So that's basically coming. And both pipelines are not just going to be shut down forever. I just don't forecast that happening. It's been a long road, but that's happening. So in terms of where it's going to go and in terms of positioning yourself for that, it's meet as many people as possible. You got to gain the trust of as many people as possible, and that is your friends and your friends' friends and your friends' professional network and your professional network. You got to expand this out, and that's why touching as many clients as possible. Some of them, the listings they won't sell. They'll be disappointed in you. They might not trust you as a realtor anymore, and that's okay. But that's going to be the exception, not the rule. Whereas you're very upfront with people, you're working your butt off, you're very honest with people, you have the gumption to tell them the honest truth, then you'll decide whether this listing's a fit or not, whether it should stay on the market or not. But you meet this many people that when all of a sudden the market upticks, you're going to be swimming in it. Like it's going to be insanity about how fast the deals come in for you. And that is just a huge opportunity right now to position yourself. And if you look at it that way, make sure that your expenses are in a sustainable place, and you are taking, I got to share these three things because I did this short little video on it, but I just have to say it here, is that you need three things in order to be able to understand the concepts and have the mental gumption and the mental fortitude to persevere here. And one is you need an internal locus of control, a very strong internal locus of control, and that is that you understand you're responsible for it. If you're not getting deals right now, did you spend 8 hours yesterday on the phones, door knocking? Well, if you didn't, you're not doing it. Like it's like you're not that committed to it. And I don't mean to put anybody down, but I'm just saying that it's like you can go out there and you can make your own reality happen if you really want to do it. So do you have the internal locus of control, knowing that you are the one who's responsible for how you respond to the stimulus in your life? Family members get sick, cancer is avoidable, things like that. But it's like, how are you responding to these situations? You get a choice.
I think you meant to say, just in case, I think you meant to say things like cancer are unavoidable.
Unavoidable. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Sorry.
I felt like I should.
Yeah.
If you watched that and I didn't correct it, I think it.
Yeah. Cancer. These things like cancer are unavoidable, but how you choose to respond to it.
Yes.
The second thing is that so you have an internal strong locus control. You're responsible. Second thing is you need a bias towards action. You need to be focused on getting out there and doing the activities. That's critical. Like you have to take action, and action. Having a bias towards action will lead to the results. And then the third thing is you have to have a sense of optimism. You have to have a sense of trust in yourself. And my favorite saying is that a bird never fears the branch breaking because it trusts its wings. And you need to be that bird that has that optimism that in any marketplace you'll adapt, you'll adjust. But if you're tracking your financials, if you're watching your numbers very closely, you'll know very quickly when you need to pivot. If you do look at your financials once a year at tax time, you're a year behind in making decisions. So you need to be able to look, adapt. Say this month we've had, the first quarter of the year was not what we expected. We adapt, we adjust, we take new action, and we're off to the races.
On that note, obviously, we are in the business of real estate brokerages, not real estate individual businesses. And just like there are, we've seen some realtors exit the business. Always, even in good markets, realtors exit the business because it's just not working. Something in their business financially wasn't working. They didn't have the clients coming in. They couldn't keep the lights on. In the past couple of years, we've seen some pretty high-profile brokerages and lots of lower-profile brokerages that people don't even know about. Just a few agents close their doors.
Yep.
And it's shocking to a lot of people. And obviously, running a large brokerage, we watch that, and our fingers are consistently on the pulses of, there are, currently 710 realtors that look to us to keep that boat floating, and that's a really big deal.
Yeah.
So what does it take, in your opinion, for brokerages to stay in business? Why do you think some aren't staying in business?
Yeah, it's two
It's weird
things.
to even talk about, because it's hard to think about. I think of some of those names and the people that left, and it's sensitive.
Yeah, it's two things, and I'm sure I could think of more if I spent more time or did some kind of thesis on it. But two things, in my opinion. Number one, you got to be watching your numbers, and I just said that. But you got to know where you stand financially, and once you know that, and you're very real with yourself on that, then you know that, as a realtor, it's like, well, we need to rent out our basement to somebody. We need to rent a room out. We need to do, we need to sell our vacation home or sell the boat that we have, whatever else. It's like, this is not real, because, what's happening, because you're watching your numbers so closely. And from a brokerage standpoint, they need to get leaner on staff, leaner on overhead, rent out offices to mortgage brokers and lawyers and things like that to increase cash flow. And you need to make sure that you're positioning yourself well. And then you can adapt. And that's the second thing, is that you know your numbers extremely well, and then you adapt. And once you adapt, then it's like nothing can affect you. It's like you're watching numbers all the time, so you can adjust your business operations accordingly, and you're watching the trends in the business. We've seen so many times that people didn't watch what was happening in terms of technology and online business and the direction the stuff was going, the people moving out of offices. We saw a huge brokerage close because their office overhead was way too high. They had almost 18,000 square feet serving 120 realtors. And as comparison, we probably have 10,000 square feet serving a little bit more than that, but serving 710 realtors. It's like we're 12,000 square feet. And you look at the difference in the economics of that, and you figure out really closely, but they just thought, this is what realtors want. And now people can do business from their phones. And there
was a time
absolutely
that people absolutely did want that.
We used to have 2 receptionists at 3 of our offices. 2 receptionists, because the phone calls for showings were insane. Insert showing time, insert texting, insert cell phones. People putting their own cell phones on them. It's like, our phones are dead. Like, they're just not what they used to be. They're not all dead, but it's a different game.
People go directly cell to cell now, right? Like,
yep.
Realtors used to advertise the office phone number, and now realtors advertise their own cell numbers.
And if you're in touch with your agent and you're listening to how their business is running, and you can provide them the services they need, you'll never go out of business. If you watch your numbers and you adapt to the needs of your consumer, which, for realtors, obviously the clients, but for us, our realtors, you'll be in business forever.
That's great.
Yeah.
In closing, let's kind of wrap this up. Some parting advice to the people watching right now for when they, and I'm gonna be a little bit specific about this. People are going to finish this interview. They're going to carry on with their day, and then tomorrow morning their alarm is going to go off. They're going to wake up.
Yeah.
If you had to give advice that was, when you wake up tomorrow, the course of action that you should be taking in your day based off of this marketplace and how that time should be divided up, that's not on this question list, so I'm making you think a little bit, but what would your suggestion for that be? Because I think a lot of people literally are like, I don't know what to do next. Just give me a task. Okay,
so tomorrow morning, you wake up, you make sure you have a good set of headphones, go on to Apple or YouTube and play some classical music list, whatever, instrumental. You go to a coffee shop, get out of the house, put it in, and for 2 hours, I want you to spend the first hour being real with your financials. Figuring out, look at your bank statements, figuring out how much you spend, jot it down on a pad of paper about how much you're spending each and every month. On your business, your home, everything. Your second step is that you're going to spend the next hour figuring out what you can control, which activities can you do if you have no money, anything else, what can you do in your business right now to start generating activities, start generating business. In that 2 hours, you're going to have know exactly what you need to do for the next 2 hours, which is going to be the business generation. And that evening and the next day, you can start trimming your expenses, but you're going to look at the next 2 hours after that, and from that, for 5 days a week, every single day, you're going to spend minimum of 2 hours focusing on generating business. And I don't care what it is. If your online leads aren't performing the way they used to perform, or if you haven't been in touch with your database, you're going to do that. And if you run out of people in your database because you only have 25 people to call, then it's like, great, now you move on to, meeting people in your community, and you're knocking on doors, and you're, going for coffee with people, and you're visiting builders, and you're doing things that, you're meeting people and you're generating business. And I just can't speak enough to the, 3 key real estate habits of, number 1, generating business every single day, 2 to 4 hours, and just focusing on tasks that you can do. You got your open houses booked, you're doing calls to the people you know, and heaven forbid, if things are that dire, you're knocking on bloody doors, like you really are, and you're getting in touch with people, and that's basically it. So it's like you focus on lead generation, 2 to 4 hours each day. You have some skill development. You plug in a very motivational book. You attend a course, and the third one, or actually the second one, the third one is skill development. The second one is you track your business every single week. You got to track your results, your financials, and figure out what actually is working, what's not working, and you reinvest the stuff that is working, and you adapt and adjust the stuff that's not working.
One of the things that I can speak to too, because from my role at doing the marketing at CIR is marketing is it's 100% about getting business, getting new business, and keeping your customers happy, and that, marketing really is everything. And I think of what's the easiest for me and what's the hardest for me. And the easiest is to always throw money at a problem.
Yeah.
Always, right? We could say, we have an event coming up and we need to make sure that all of our realtors are there, and it could be, okay, well, I'm going to take out $1,000 worth of Facebook ads, and I'm just going to, kind of make sure that they all see these, and I'm going to press this button, and I'm going to hire a graphic designer, and I'm going to get this graphic designer to make this ad, and I'm going to press these 2 buttons, and voila. But really, if you don't have that, I'm going to print out a list of the realtors in our company that need to come to this event. And I'm going to write down all of their phone numbers, and for the next 3 days, I'm going to pick up the phone, and I'm going to call them.
Yep.
And sometimes when you don't have hordes of cash, and I love the 3 things that you talked about, because the 3 things you talked about don't cost any money for anybody to do, and they're probably also the most effective, because I look at, my example that I'm trying to, how I would see this is, I can do that, which actually doesn't put me in touch with anybody. People will see it, but I'm not developing any relationships, and I'm kind of throwing all this money at this problem and hoping a couple people will grasp at straws, versus if I took the 3 days it would take to call all of those people, to have a voice-to-voice conversation where I'm connecting to you personally, I'm making notes in my database about it, and I'm not spending any money on anything, but it's all time, and it's just repetitive action. And your examples, I think, are so powerful, because I know even in my job, it is the repetitive, harder actions that typically pay off the best. And in this market, it's a great opportunity to go back to the basics and just set yourself up that way.
Yeah.
And it works.
Yeah, it really is. And there's the joke or the posters and stuff, rise and grind. And it's like, it's a grind. I get it. Like, it's a grind, but we can't just keel over and die. You got to be the person that steps up and says, all right, if it is to be, it's up to me. I got to make it work, and I got to start adapting, and that's it. And you got to get out there and do something. You got to have that bias towards action.
Awesome. Well, thank you for this.
Hey, my pleasure.
I hope everybody enjoyed this. I think you have such a cool story, and you have so much experience as an agent that we don't often get to showcase, but also the business sense in which you run the brokerage. I know that everybody respects, and they all say nice things about you behind your back. So we thought we'd put you on a couch and ask you some questions. So thank you very much for tuning in, everybody. And that's it. Have a great day. This interview will also be on our Agent Pursuit podcast. So if you know of somebody that could benefit from this and likes to listen while they're running or while they're driving, you can download the podcast and just listen to the audio track as well as many of the interviews that we do. So check that out if you enjoyed this. Thanks for being with us, and thanks, Linz.
Thanks, guys.